Beverly Hills, where the afternoon sunlight gilds the perfectly straight avenues lined with swaying palm trees. Bentleys and Lamborghinis sit parked neatly along marble-paved sidewalks, their polished surfaces glinting like diamonds under the sun. On the sidewalks, confident steps of businessmen in tailor-made suits and graceful turns of women draped in designer handbags quietly declare that this is a place for the rich and the successful. But amidst this extravagant scene, a solitary figure walks unnoticed. His worn-out shoes are so frayed that their original color has become a distant memory. His faded clothes, their seams splitting, seem to bear the scars of time and hardship. Wild, unkempt hair peeks out from beneath a tattered baseball cap. He moves through the crowd with a calm demeanor, but his deep, piercing eyes, Elon Musk's eyes, observe everything with a unique curiosity. Today, Elon is not the billionaire the world admires. No one recognizes him, and he doesn't need to be recognized. This is a challenge, a social experiment he's set for himself to uncover one truth. How do people treat each other when stripped of the masks of wealth and status? Elon's steps halt before the gleaming glass doors of First Pioneer Bank. He takes a deep breath, his calloused hand pressing against the cool glass as he pushes it open. Inside, light from grand chandeliers cascades down, glimmering off polished marble floors. The space exudes luxury, a grandeur designed to overwhelm anyone who steps in. Elegant leather chairs are neatly arranged, where clients sit leisurely sipping coffee, while sharply dressed bankers move confidently through the room. The clicks of high heels echo in harmony with soft, polite greetings exchanged in the air. But as Elon steps through the door, an unnatural silence ripples through the room. Eyes turn toward him, first filled with curiosity before shifting into something else. Scrutiny, judgment, dismissal. Elon feels it all. Every glance, every unspoken thought racing through the minds of those in the room. He doesn't feel hurt, but there's a faint, dull ache somewhere deep inside. What if this wasn't me? He wonders. What if it were someone truly homeless? How would they be treated? His footsteps continue to echo softly against the marble floor, their sound magnified in the quiet room as if breaking the tense atmosphere. He approaches the counter, his gaze falling on the woman standing behind it. She looks up at him, her initial surprise quickly replaced with indifference. Elon meets her gaze, a faint smile tugging at his lips, a smile that seems all too familiar with looks like these. He stands at the counter, placing his calloused hand gently on its smooth surface. Behind the desk is Charlotte, a bank employee in her 40s, her stern face framed by a perfectly neat bun and an impeccable dark suit. Charlotte looks up, and for a moment, there's a flicker of surprise in her eyes as she takes in Elon's disheveled appearance. But it vanishes as quickly as it came, replaced by a cold, impassive look, like a door slamming shut in front of an unwelcome guest. "Good afternoon, sir," she says, her voice steady and distant, carrying a polite detachment. "How may I help you?" Elon smiled, a faint, yet quietly confident smile. "I'd like to open a bank account," he said, his voice calm, as if he was completely unaware of the judgment in her eyes. Charlotte raised an eyebrow, as though she had just heard something absurd. "We require a minimum of $500 to open an account," she replied, emphasizing each word clearly, ensuring he would understand the condition. "Do you have the necessary funds with you?" Slowly, Elon reached into the tattered pocket of his worn-out jacket. He pulled out a crumpled $20 bill and placed it gently on the counter, his calm demeanor unwavering. "This is all I have," he said softly, his tone as light as a breeze, yet his sharp gaze seemed to challenge the prejudice he could feel emanating from her. The room froze. A few curious glances from other customers began to drift toward the counter. Charlotte stared at the money, her lips curling into a small smile, not one of warmth, but of condescension and ridicule. "Sir," she said, her voice cold and metallic, "this is not sufficient. Perhaps you should try finding a bank more." suitable for your circumstances. Her words sliced through the quiet room like a blade. A few customers shook their heads slightly. Others quickly looked down, suddenly engrossed in their phones, as if they wanted no part in what was happening. Elon remained silent, standing there without reaction. Slowly, he picked up the $20 bill, folded it carefully, and slipped it back into his pocket. In that moment, he wasn't just a man being turned away. He had become a symbol for anyone who had ever been judged or rejected based solely on appearances. But he wasn't angry, nor did he defend himself. Instead, his eyes held a quiet glimmer of hope. Because amidst all this cold indifference, he still believed there was someone, a single heart, that could see beyond the surface. Elon turned to leave, his footsteps echoing steadily across the marble floor. But just as his hand touched the door, a soft voice called from behind him. "Wait!" Elon paused at the sound. It wasn't loud, but it carried warmth and hesitation, like a small candle being lit in a dark, cold room. He turned around, his gaze meeting the eyes of a young woman standing behind the counter. The woman, Megan, was a young trainee, no more than 24 years old. Her hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, and her deep brown eyes reflected a mix of concern and sincerity. Her uniform wasn't as pristine as Charlotte's, but her face shone with an earnestness that was impossible to ignore. Megan stepped forward, her low heels making soft, deliberate sounds on the marble floor. She glanced nervously at Charlotte, whose face now held a warning scowl, but Megan pressed on, her resolve unshaken. "Could you come back to the counter?" Megan asked, her voice small but clear, as if she was gathering every ounce of courage she had to say those words. Elon looked at her, his eyes glimmering with a quiet hope. He said nothing, only nodded gently and walked back to the counter. This time, every pair of eyes in the room turned toward them. Not out of mockery or idle curiosity, but out of sheer surprise. Megan bent down, quickly flipping through a few pages. "We have a special policy," she whispered, her voice low as if meant only for Elon. "Employees can authorize account openings under exceptional circumstances, if approved." Charlotte stepped forward, her voice slicing through the room like a cold winter wind. "Megan, you are not allowed to do this. The bank's rules are clear." For the first time, Megan looked up, her eyes flashing with a determination that even she hadn't known existed. "I know," she replied, her voice trembling slightly but steady. "But sometimes, we need to put people above the rules." The room seemed to freeze. Charlotte said nothing more, but she stepped back, her face flushing red with anger and embarrassment. Elon watched the scene unfold in silence. He could see the nervousness in Megan's every move, but he also felt the courage rising within her. This wasn't just the act of a bank employee. It was a statement, a testament to the value of compassion in a world so quick to judge. Megan continued working, her hands growing steadier with each step of the process. As she entered Elon's details into the system, her voice was soft but reassuring. "I'll open the account for you. No initial deposit required. I can use my employee privileges to help." Elon said nothing, but his eyes reflected a profound gratitude. When everything was complete, Megan placed the account card on the counter and gently slid it toward Elon. "Here," she said, her voice slightly shaky but filled with pride. "Your account is ready." Elon took the card, his rough hands closing around it with a gentle firmness. "Thank you, Megan," he said, his voice deep and warm, as though every word carried the weight of an entire world. The eyes around the room began to shift. No longer filled with judgment or dismissal, they now reflected curiosity and perhaps a tinge of regret from those who had turned away before. Megan watched as Elon left, her heart swelling with both anxiety and pride. She didn't know what would happen next, but in that moment, she knew she had done the right thing. The next morning, golden sunlight streamed through the polished glass windows of First Pioneer Bank, creating a scene of quiet brilliance. The air still felt heavy, a lingering trace of yesterday's events. Charlotte stood at her station, a faint scowl creasing her face every time her gaze happened to land on Megan. Megan, though fully focused on her work, could feel the strange tension in the room. A few of her colleagues stole furtive glances at her, their expressions a mix of curiosity and subtle judgment. But she paid them no mind, determined to keep her attention on her daily tasks. Suddenly, the glass doors of the bank swung open, and a soft breeze swept in. The silhouette that stepped inside was familiar, Elon Musk. But this time, he wasn't wearing the tattered clothes from the day before. Instead, he was dressed in a simple yet elegant suit, paired with polished leather shoes and a confident stride. The moment he entered, the entire bank seemed to freeze. Charlotte immediately recognized him, her expression unable to hide her shock. Megan looked up as well, her heart pounding in her chest. This time, Elon didn't approach the teller counter. Instead, he walked to the large table in the center of the lobby, reserved for management meetings. Pulling out a chair, he sat down, silent but radiating authority. Charlotte, stunned for a moment, quickly made her way toward him. "Sir," she said, her voice firm yet tinged with unease. "This area is for management only. If you don't have business here, I'm afraid you can't sit." Elon looked up, his expression calm but piercing. "I do have business," he replied, his voice deep and clear. "But first, I want to thank Megan for her actions yesterday, and I believe everyone here needs to hear a few things today." The bank seemed to freeze in time. Charlotte frowned slightly, as if preparing to object, but Elon pulled a phone from the pocket of his suit jacket. With a few swift taps, he placed the screen down on the table in front of Charlotte. On the screen was a news article with a bold headline: "Elon Musk, tech billionaire, founder of SpaceX and Tesla." The moment was like a tidal wave crashing through the room. Every pair of eyes turned to Elon. Charlotte stood motionless, her eyes wide, her face turning pale with shock. "You're Elon Musk?" she stammered, her voice trembling with disbelief and embarrassment. Elon smiled faintly and nodded. "Yes. And yesterday, I didn't come here as a billionaire. I came here as someone who wanted to see how you treat those you believe have nothing to offer." A ripple of whispers spread through the lobby. Employees and customers alike, so accustomed to polished professionalism and surface-level courtesy, were now riveted by the unfolding scene. Elon stood, his gaze sweeping the room, landing on each person. "How we treat those with nothing. That is the true measure of our character. And I'm sorry to say, what I witnessed yesterday is not something any of you should be proud of." He paused, his sharp eyes locking onto Charlotte. "You rejected me. You mocked the money I brought. But Megan..." He turned toward the young woman standing frozen near the counter. "Megan did something no one else dared to do. She acted not just with her head, but with her heart." Megan stood still, her wide eyes filled with shock, unable to speak. In that moment, she felt every gaze in the room land on her. But this time, those eyes didn't carry judgment. They carried respect. Elon stepped closer, placing his hand gently on the table in front of Megan. "Thank you, Megan," he said, his voice warm and steady. "Your actions didn't just change how I view this bank. They reminded me that kindness still exists." The atmosphere in the room grew heavy, yet brimming with emotion. Charlotte lowered her head, her face flushed with shame. Megan, however, stood tall, a newfound strength blossoming within her as Elon's words settled deep in her heart. For the first time, she felt truly seen, not as a mere intern, but as someone who made a difference. Elon looked around the room, a faint smile playing on his lips. "We need more people like Megan," he said. "And I have a feeling this won't be the last time we work together." That afternoon, the atmosphere at First Pioneer Bank was anything but normal. Elon Musk's words, each one heavy with meaning, still echoed in the minds of everyone present. Behind the counter, Megan felt a new kind of pressure. She had been recognized by Elon, But with that came the curious, admiring, and sometimes envious gazes of her colleagues. As the workday ended, Megan carefully tidied up her desk. Elon's words still lingered in her mind. She wondered if she truly deserved his praise, and whether her small act of kindness had really made any difference at all. But as she stepped out of the bank, there he was, Elon Musk, standing beside a sleek black Tesla, his faint smile waiting for her. "Megan," he called out, his voice calm but warm. "Do you have a moment to talk?" Megan nodded, her heartbeat quickening. "Yes, of course," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. They walked to a small cafe nearby, where the soft golden light of dusk filtered through the windows, giving the space a cozy, intimate glow. Elon chose a small table by the window, one with a view of the bustling street outside. Megan sat down, her hands resting on the table, slightly clenched as nervous energy hummed through her. Elon studied her for a moment, as though evaluating something, before he spoke gently. "Do you know why I came back, Megan?" he asked, his tone deep and serious. Megan shook her head, her expression tinged with confusion. "No, but I'm guessing it has something to do with yesterday?" Elon smiled. "You're right. Your actions yesterday didn't just help me. They reminded me of the most important part of any system: people." He paused, his gaze sharpening. "And I think you're the right person to help me build something bigger." Megan leaned forward slightly, her eyes wide with surprise. "What do you mean?" she asked. Elon set his coffee cup down, his hands interlocking as he spoke. "I'm building a new kind of banking system, a place where anyone, regardless of how much money they have or where they come from, feels valued and supported. A system that breaks old, rigid rules and puts people first." He paused, making sure his words fully sank in. "And I want you to join me on this journey." Megan sat motionless, as though every word Elon had spoken needed time to settle in her mind. "You want me to join you?" she asked, her voice a mixture of shock and disbelief. "Yes," Elon replied firmly. "You have courage and a heart big enough to see beyond numbers and rules. You proved that already. And I believe, with the right guidance, you can achieve incredible things." Megan felt a surge of emotions welling up inside her. Pride, hope, but also a hint of worry. "I'm not sure I'm capable of handling something this big," she admitted, her voice growing softer. "I'm just an intern. I don't have much experience." Elon shook his head, his gaze filled with steady resolve. "You don't need to be perfect. I've failed more times than I can count before reaching where I am today. What I need from you is determination and a kind heart. Everything else, we'll learn and build together." Megan fell silent, her eyes drifting away from Elon and toward the window. The last light of day was fading, bathing the bustling streets outside in a warm golden hue. Inside her, a small spark of belief began to flicker. This wasn't just an invitation. It was an opportunity to change her life, and perhaps the world. Turning back to Elon, her eyes now glimmered with determination. "All right," she said, her voice stronger than it had ever been. "I'm in." Elon smiled, a look of both satisfaction and relief. "Good. We'll begin right away. And I promise, this will be a journey you'll never regret." 1 week later, Megan walked into her new office, the starting point of the journey Elon had promised. The space was vast and modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows letting in the soft morning sunlight. The energy here was vibrant, a sharp contrast to the rigid and impersonal atmosphere of First Pioneer Bank. Elon greeted her with a warm smile. Standing in the middle of the room with a cup of coffee in hand, he gestured to the diverse team behind him: financial experts, tech engineers, and strategists. "Welcome to the team, Megan," Elon said. "We're building something unprecedented, and I believe you'll play an important role in this mission." From the very first meetings, Megan realized the work was far harder than she had imagined. Every idea she presented was met with sharp questions, and sometimes outright skepticism, from the team. A bank with no minimum balance? No hidden fees? It sounds noble, but how do we sustain it? Asked a financial expert sitting across from her, his voice tinged with doubt. The pressure weighed on Megan's shoulders. She glanced at Elon, who offered her only a calm, encouraging smile, his gaze reminding her that this was her moment to prove herself. Taking a deep breath, Megan responded in a steady, measured tone. We're not just building a bank, we're building trust. Once customers trust us, they'll stay with us. This isn't just about money, it's about people. The room fell silent for a moment. A few heads nodded subtly, but Megan knew there was still a long road ahead to win everyone over. To truly understand the communities they aimed to serve, Elon and Megan decided to visit underserved neighborhoods where traditional banks had long overlooked people's needs. One afternoon, they traveled to a struggling area on the outskirts of the city, where working-class families fought to get by without access to bank accounts. In a small, run-down home, Megan met a young mother holding a baby in her arms. "I have to hide money under my bed," the young mother said, her voice tinged with exhaustion. "I don't qualify for a bank account, and every time I need to pay a bill, I spend an entire day at the payment office, paying extra service fees. I just want a safe place to keep the little money I have." Her words hit Megan like a wave, leaving her speechless. She could only nod, but deep inside, she made a silent promise that Equity First Bank would not remain just a dream. It would become a reality, bringing opportunities to people like this young mother. The project finally moved into the testing phase. Elon and Megan decided to launch the first branch in the very community they had visited. The bank was designed to be friendly and accessible, with simple processes that allowed people to open accounts without financial or bureaucratic barriers. On opening day, a long line formed outside the bank. For many, it was the first time in their lives they could open an account without worrying about restrictive conditions. An elderly man, his calloused hands and deeply lined face bearing the weight of years, gripped Megan's hand tightly and said, "Thank you. You've given us hope, something I thought I would never see in my lifetime." Megan was so moved that words failed her. She simply nodded, her eyes glistening with tears, but her lips forming a soft, heartfelt smile. The first branch of Equity First Bank quickly became a focal point of attention. It wasn't just the story of a bank. It was proof that the financial system could change to serve people rather than pure profit. Newspapers and television programs began covering the groundbreaking bank, emphasizing the roles of Elon Musk and Megan, a young intern with a heart full of compassion. One morning, while Megan was reviewing customer accounts, she received a call from a small town in the Midwest. On the other end of the line was an elderly man. His voice trembled, but every word carried profound emotion. "Thank you," he said. "I've spent my whole life thinking I'd never set foot in a bank. Thanks to you, I've been able to save enough money to buy my grandson his very first gift." Stories like these became more frequent, each one reaffirming Megan's belief that they were doing something monumental, not just for individuals, but for entire communities. But with success came mounting pressure. Encouraged by the initial triumph, Elon and Megan's team began expanding the project into more cities. However, not everyone welcomed this change. Traditional banks, long accustomed to maximizing profits, began pushing back fiercely. During an important meeting, a financial advisor stood up, his voice laced with sharp criticism. "We're disrupting a system that has existed for centuries. What we're doing could destabilize the industry. How can we ensure this model will remain sustainable?" Megan took a deep breath. This was her moment to prove that their vision was not just idealistic, but achievable. Rising to her feet, she spoke with a clear and unwavering voice. "We're not tearing the system down. We're rebuilding it. The old system has left too many people behind, people who deserve a chance. And if we don't have the courage to try, then who will?" Megan's words brought silence to the room. Though not everyone agreed, the determination in her voice planted a seed of belief in their hearts. After much debate, the team decided to open another branch in a struggling community in the South. Megan led the survey team, meeting with locals firsthand to understand their needs. She met a woman named Clara, a single mother struggling to make a living selling street food. Clara shared how each month she paid exorbitant fees just to convert her cash into checks to pay her bills. "I just want a place where I'm not looked down on every time I walk in," Clara said, her voice breaking. Those words etched themselves into Megan's memory. When the second branch opened, Clara was one of its first customers. She broke into tears as she received her very first bank account. "Thanks to this bank, I no longer have to dread bill payment days," Clara said, clutching Megan's hand tightly. Despite the growing support for Equity First Bank, criticism from the traditional financial industry intensified. A major newspaper ran an article titled, "Elon Musk's Bank, Can Dreams Defeat Reality?" The weight of that scrutiny bore down on Megan. She often questioned whether they were truly on the right path or if they were just dreamers challenging an unchangeable system. But every time she met someone like Clara, she found her answer. Elon, too, refused to let her lose heart. One evening, as they worked late in the office, he said to her, "Don't let the critics pull you down. Anything worth doing takes time. Remember why we started, and never forget the people we're fighting for." One crisp autumn morning, soft sunlight filtered through the windows of the large conference room, where Megan stood before a presentation board outlining the expansion plans for Equity First Bank. Her eyes shone with passion, though deep down, a hint of worry lingered. This wasn't just another internal meeting. Seated in the room were key potential investors who would decide the project's future. "You want us to invest in a bank with no transaction fees? No minimum balances? How do you guarantee profitability?" asked an older investor, his voice sharp and skeptical. Megan swallowed hard, feeling the tension in the room. But before she could respond, Elon, sitting at the head of the table, spoke up, his voice deep and commanding. "Profit isn't our primary goal. It's the result of trust." When Megan says we're building a fairer banking system, she isn't just speaking about ethics. This is strategy. A bank that helps people build better lives will, in turn, earn their loyalty and ensure its own financial sustainability. Elon's words brought a momentary silence to the room. Megan looked at him, her eyes full of gratitude. Fueled by his support, she continued her presentation with renewed confidence, detailing plans to use technology to optimize services, reduce operational costs, and reach even more underserved customers. After the meeting, Megan and her team quickly launched the trial of their mobile banking model in communities without access to financial services. These were advanced, technology-equipped trucks, essentially banks on wheels, capable of reaching even the most remote areas. One day, Megan and her team arrived at a small village in the Southwest, where residents had lived their whole lives without bank accounts. There, she met a woman named Lila, a mother of 3, who walked nearly 10 kilometers every day to convert cash into checks to pay her bills. When Lila was told she could open an account on the spot, without complex paperwork or minimum deposits, she burst into tears. "I never thought I'd be treated like this," Lila said, gripping Megan's hand tightly. Those words resonated deeply with Megan. She realized that with every account opened, they weren't just providing a service. They were giving hope, something so many people had lost long ago. But this success didn't come without challenges. Traditional banks intensified their opposition, using media outlets to criticize Equity First Bank. They claimed Elon and Megan's model was unrealistic and posed a risk of destabilizing the entire industry. The mounting pressure weighed heavily on Megan. One evening, as she worked late in the office, Elon walked in, setting a cup of coffee on her desk. "It's tough, isn't it?" he asked, his voice gentle but understanding. Megan looked up, her eyes weary. "Sometimes, I wonder if we're doing the right thing. The criticism, I'm afraid it's making people lose faith." Elon smiled and sat across from her. Megan, do you know something? Those criticisms are proof we're making a difference. If people didn't find us threatening, then we probably wouldn't be doing enough. His words left Megan speechless. She could feel the confidence radiating from Elon, a confidence not just built from experience, but from an unshakable belief in their mission. A few weeks later, a special event took place. Elon organized a press conference at the bank's headquarters to celebrate the success of their mobile banking initiative. The stories of their first customers, like Lila, were shared, not as dry statistics, but as living proof of how Equity First Bank was transforming lives. Megan stepped onto the stage, her first time addressing the press and public as a representative of the project. Her voice trembled slightly at first, but every word carried raw emotion. We're not just opening a bank. We're opening opportunities, trust, and hope. This isn't just our project. It's everyone's journey to build a fairer world. The room erupted in applause, the sound echoing for what felt like forever. Megan felt the belief and support radiating from the crowd. She knew the road ahead would still be challenging, but this moment was proof that they were on the right path. Following the press conference, Equity First Bank became a global phenomenon, attracting attention not only in the United States, but worldwide. However, this newfound fame brought new pressures. Large traditional banks began using their influence to create hurdles for the project. Media narratives split into two camps. Some praised Elon and Megan's visionary model, while others criticized it as unsustainable and overly idealistic. One morning, as Megan stepped into the office, she received an urgent message from the legal department. A major bank had filed a lawsuit against Equity First Bank, accusing their model of violating fair competition regulations. Megan felt as though her heart had been squeezed tight. This wasn't just a legal challenge. It was a direct attack on the very values she and Elon were building. What should we do? Megan asked Elon, her voice unable to hide her concern. Elon sat in silence for a moment, his sharp eyes filled with determination. We'll face it, he said firmly. This isn't the first time I've been challenged by those afraid of change, and I can guarantee it won't be the last. As news of the lawsuit spread, something unexpected happened. An outpouring of support erupted from the community, stronger than ever before. Customers who had been helped by Equity First Bank began to speak up. They shared their stories on social media, sent letters to major newspapers, and even organized gatherings to express their gratitude. One video in particular went viral. It featured Lila, the single mother from the South, sharing her experience. Equity First Bank didn't just help me open a bank account. They made me feel like I deserved the same respect as anyone else. They gave me faith in myself. The video garnered millions of views, sparking a wave of powerful emotions. The public not only rallied behind the bank, but also began questioning, why haven't traditional financial institutions done the same? Amid the turmoil, Megan felt the pressure mounting. But during this challenging time, she realized the true strength of the team Elon had built. They weren't just colleagues, they were people united by a shared vision. One evening, as she worked late in the office, Marcus, a financial analyst who grew up in an underserved community, walked in. Don't forget why we started this, Megan, Marcus said, his voice steady and warm. We're not fighting for profit. We're fighting for the people who don't have anyone to stand up for them. And if facing challenges like this is the price we pay, then it's worth every moment. Marcus's words reignited something inside Megan, like a flame bursting back to life. She realized she wasn't alone. Behind her stood a team, Elon, and millions of people waiting for a fairer system. The lawsuit was eventually resolved through a legal settlement, but the experience had only strengthened Elon and Megan's resolve. They realized that to drive real change, they needed to do more than just build a bank. They needed to create a global movement. Elon made a bold decision: expand the Equity First Bank model into developing countries. These are places where outdated financial systems have abandoned millions. he said during a team meeting. Megan was tasked with leading the project in Africa, a region where access to banking remained critically low. She carried with her not just passion and determination, but also the lessons learned from every challenge they had faced before. During a visit to a small village in Kenya, Megan met Aisha, a woman who managed a modest farm. Aisha shared her struggles, explaining how she was always denied loans by traditional banks because she lacked sufficient collateral. When Megan explained that Equity First Bank was willing to offer loans based on the farm's income, Aisha couldn't hold back her tears. "You've given us not just an opportunity, but a dream I thought I could never reach," she said, gripping Megan's hands tightly. Megan's journey didn't just yield financial results. It sparked a revolution of hope and trust. She realized that the Equity First Bank model was about more than just banking. It was a transformation, a movement to redefine how society treats its most vulnerable. When Elon heard Megan's report, his face lit up with pride. "We're not just changing banking," he said. "We're changing how the world views fairness." That evening, Megan sat on a wooden bench beneath a tree in a small Kenyan village, the crimson glow of sunset painting the horizon. In front of her, villagers laughed and talked, sharing stories of how their lives had changed thanks to the bank she and Elon had built. Children played freely, mothers smiled warmly, and fathers nodded with quiet pride, knowing their families finally had a chance at a better future. Elon approached from behind, carrying 2 cups of hot tea. He handed one to Megan before sitting beside her. "It's hard to believe, isn't it?" Megan said softly, her voice laced with emotion. "It is," Elon replied, his gaze fixed on the joyful villagers. "But you did this, Megan. You didn't just change banking. You changed how the world sees fairness." Megan smiled faintly, her eyes glowing with purpose. "We've come so far, but I feel like this is only the beginning." Elon nodded, his smile full of trust and certainty. "You're right. This is the beginning of a future we're going to build, a future where anyone, no matter where they come from, has opportunity and belief in themselves." They sat in silence, a silence filled with meaning. It was a quiet affirmation that their mission was not about money or banking, but about people. The story of Elon Musk and Megan doesn't end with a bank. It is a reminder that any one of us can make a difference. A small act of kindness can spark great change, breaking through every limit. Their journey has inspired millions around the world, and we hope this story touches your heart too. If you believe that kindness and fairness can change the world, share this story with others. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button on the Inspiring Hearts YouTube channel to follow more meaningful stories like this. Together, we can spread these powerful values to every corner of the globe. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next story.